All right. Hello, world. Welcome back. This is episode 5 of the Resistanz Podcast. I'm Connor.
And I'm Thurston.
We are recording this July 12th, 2023.
Yep.
Very exciting. So last week we touched on supplements. And specifically, we spent most of our time on essential nutrients. You know, what are the things that we're missing in our diets? What should we add in and supplement to, bring us up to good health?
Yep.
And this week, we're going to talk about some extra stuff that we can add in that, we're not going to die if we don't have, but they can have awesome effects on our overall health.
Yeah.
So let's recap everybody a little bit. Let's catch up and just give out some reminders about some of the general things we talked about last week.
Yeah. So last week we focused, because I do put these two categories. One is like the essential nutrients that you absolutely need to survive and ideally thrive. So we talked about RDAs and then optimum levels and that type of thing, and how the average person is lacking in most of those nutrients. Mm-hmm. So, try to get the diet dialed in as much as you can, and then where there may still be a need for supplementation. So this week, way more on the specialized supplements that can have these tremendous effects on our health and performance in different ways, but you don't necessarily need them. So the body can even produce these in varying levels. But definitely we're going to obviously all that aspect.
Yeah, will you give us a little recap of, I think you had a list of your top 5 supplements.
Yeah.
Let's, 30 seconds, tell the people just so they can write those down really quick before we move on.
Yeah, so the 5 that I recommend that a lot of people are lacking in and that can get tremendous health benefits. My number 1 was the omega-3, so
yes.
EPA, DHA. So we went into that in a lot of detail. Then I talked about magnesium. I talked about, which again, super important nutrient that most people are lacking in, because even in the soil and things like that, it's lacking, so it's hard to get in through your diet. Mm-hmm. K2, brilliant nutrient, incredibly good for the calcium, putting it where it needs to be, very good in terms of metabolic health and heart health. Then I talked about zinc. Mm-hmm. And what was my 5th one? D3. Yeah, so the vitamin D as well.
That was helpful. It was finally helpful.
So
awesome.
They were my top 5 that I kind of recommended.
Yeah.
And to get those in optimum. And look, there's lots of other ones, but again,
these are ours.
And we could
we'll
probably do future ones. But things like iodine, again, a lot of people are lacking in. Didn't talk about that last week, but that's another one that can be very good for your metabolism in particular. So, but that was the kind of main ones that we covered last week and what we recommended. Now we did touch on. We started going into some of the specialized ones, in particular
amino acids,
the one that we covered.
Protein.
Yeah, amino acids, but we covered creatine, which would really should technically
it's
be
leaning
more
into
this category, where it's like more of a specialized one. You don't necessarily need it. It is in foods anyway, but has this tremendous effect that we talked about last week. So that's a little bit of a summary.
Yeah, so if you haven't already, please go back, watch episode 4. There's some awesome information. All the things we talked about here, we go into way more depth. So if you want to have a real understanding of why these nutrients are so important, go back.
Absolutely.
Listen to that.
Yeah.
And this week, we're going to talk about some cool stuff. Where do you want to start?
So,
as I sip my Resistanz espresso. My pre-workout.
So there's some really, really exciting nutrients to talk about. The first thing I wanted to talk about, because it's this actually equates to 2 different supplements that I wanted to talk about, are nutrients, but the end result is what's called nitric oxide. So nitric oxide is an incredible, it's actually like a gas that's in our system that has a tremendous effect on our overall health, and really exciting research on nitric oxide. So what nitric oxide does, it actually helps your circulation. It helps to increase your blood flow. And there's 2 nutrients in particular that seem to increase this nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide is actually, You can get it like actual nitric oxide, but it's incredibly difficult how they implement it. Like they will do it under like in a
full-on
hospital
machine.
or whatever.
Yeah.
They actually use it, funnily enough, as treatment in COVID with amazing success.
The C word.
But it just wasn't practical to do this on a large scale to help people. But they did have areas where they had these canisters, and I don't know the technical stuff how they do it, but all I know it's super hard and complicated, and if you get it wrong, it's a disaster. So very difficult to do on a big scale. But nitric oxide, yeah, it actually has antiviral properties, but incredible in terms of dilating your arteries to increase blood flow. So for instance, one of the effects of increasing nitric oxide is going to reduce your blood pressure considerably. For instance, one of the nutrients that you take that increases nitric oxide, they were seeing like considerable drops in blood pressure, 5 to 15%, which is a lot.
That's really big, yeah.
Yeah. And also it increases your performance because it allows you at the same level of intensity or heart rate, for instance, you can get more oxygen to the cells. So that has a brilliant impact on performance.
I was going to say it's got to translate into like VO2 max and how efficient we can take that oxygen out and use it.
Yeah. So for instance, for cyclists, they could actually cycle an extra, to get to fatigue, they're improving their endurance like 12% in one of the studies, which is that's a lot.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's amazing. I mean, that really is fantastic. So yeah, they started to see this with a lot of athletes. So there's two nutrients that can really benefit your nitric oxide in your system, and one is actually one of the ones that I have here, and I take both, and I've actually tried back and forth, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But essentially, it's beetroot. This is actually a beetroot powder. Okay. But if you just literally drink beetroot juice, and that's what some of these athletes were doing, I think starting in the 80s or 90s, and some of these Olympic people said, oh yeah, I take all this beetroot juice. And then they started, well, what the heck is that? Because these are gold medal winners or whatever. So they started to investigate it and do research. And sure enough, by taking beetroot, it increases nitrates in your system, and then that can actually help with your nitric oxide. So beetroot juice or beetroot powder, what I take, is brilliant for increasing your nitric oxide. Now, the reason I like the powder is because if you actually take beetroot juice and you drink, half a liter
probably
or
have
whatever,
to get a lot of
you have to get
the
a
juice,
lot. Yeah, and then there's a lot of sugar and carbs in it. Now, if you're an athlete, you'll probably manage it no problem. Yeah. But if you're looking at it from the point of view of metabolic health and you may have a little bit of insulin resistance or something, then you may not want to be taking all the kind of sugar and carbs that you're going to get with beetroot juice. So that's just going to depend on the individual. And something and we should put this at the beginning of all our videos, but obviously this is not for medical advice.
We are not doctors.
We are not doctors.
Surprise.
This is just for educational purposes. And we might crack a few jokes, so it's going to be educational
I mean, these things are backed by science. There's a lot of studies to support what we're saying, and also these are things that you and I recommend. You know what I mean? And to our clients and that we use in our own lives.
Yeah, just to optimize health is the angle that we come from. But some of the research is fascinating on things like blood pressure and cholesterol.
Well, that alone is huge, because if you're looking at the effects of exercise on your blood pressure, I mean, we're talking 10 or 9 points if we're looking at diastolic versus systolic. And I mean, if you're adding, would you say it can decrease it by another 10?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's good for just overall health for anyone, but especially someone that's already having some issues with high blood pressure.
Yeah, I think some of the research, like somewhere between 5 to 15% decrease in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. Yeah, really.
That alone is a huge reason to take it.
Yeah. Now, you got to be careful, because if you've low blood pressure, then you may not want to take it.
And again, don't people also, maybe I'm wrong here, don't people take beet juice and beet powder for pre-workout to help with a pump?
Yeah.
And is that how this is the nitric oxide, or is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Nitric oxide, is
yeah,
that
yeah.
part of the function?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so lowering blood pressure, big one, and just helping in general kind of oxygen throughout your system, and then performance. So it's going to help both in performance for aerobic type exercise, because again, at the same heart rate, if you think of it like you're almost fitter at the same heart rate.
Yeah.
So it has this great effect of endurance, but also even just with training, you're going to get more of a pump. So obviously blood flow, which can be beneficial. And also in one of the studies, for instance, they could do a lot more repetitions. So for instance, if you're normally failing at 10 repetitions, one of the research studies is like a 50% increase in the amount of reps.
Wow.
That's a lot. So very, very good as, taking it before working out. So anything that's going to increase nitric oxide. So the two things is going to be, like I said, the beetroot powder is number one.
Okay.
And the other is citruline, L-citrulline or citrulline malate. So that's very good as well. And they work slightly differently. So it's funny because I was kind of curious because I sometimes I take citrulline, sometimes I take beetroot, and sometimes I take both combined. And it's only just last year that a really good research paper that came out that showed that taking both together was much better than either on their own. So it's a really good study, and we might just throw up a graph of that study because it shows the control group. Obviously, they were just taking a placebo, taking just the citrulline, taking just the beetroot powder, and then the citrulline and the beetroot powder combined, and that was way more effective. And they were looking at a number of different things. Grip strength, it didn't have a huge big difference in terms of grip strength, but then for the aerobic, they used, I think, the Cooper Institute measure for that, so much better for endurance. And then trying to remember the fourth one, but I'll think of it in a second. But yeah, all across the board, you could see great benefits, and then the two combined was even better again.
Awesome. So we can
Could have
stack
been blood
those.
pressure. It could have been the lowering the blood pressure. But anyway, we'll show up the graph on that research study because that was just 2022 January that it was published. So that was a really good study showing the benefits and also just which one, how they work, and combining the two is even better. So both citrulline and beetroot. And I'm also going to link to a really good podcast where an expert in nitric oxide talks all about this in detail, because again, you could go forever in this. But that's just something, blood pressure, performance, getting way better, more of a blood, like a pump during your workout. And while we're on that, we may as well throw in there. It's like
I know where he's going.
A little
bit of better performance below the belt.
Yeah. So
for guys
and girls.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like Viagra actually works for both.
Okay.
Yeah, because you better blood flow in the area for women too.
Got it.
Is
That's
beneficial.
a thumbs up.
So for pleasure, etc. So yeah, it's like a natural Viagra basically. So nitric oxide really good for that. So there are all the benefits. And there's a lot more benefits of nitric oxide because it does have this sort of antiviral effect. It has a good effect on the microbiome, which is a common theme throughout a lot of things that we're going to go through. There's a huge overlap with this. But yeah, I just think they're fantastic supplements.
That's awesome.
And you're going to see more and more come out of the benefits of nitric oxide.
Let's talk a little bit about dosage and timing. So obviously some nutrients don't really matter when you take them. Like last week we talked about creatine. As long as it's in your system, it's okay. You don't have to down it right before the workout. What about these supplements? How much you take and when should we be taking them?
So citrulline you take quite a bit, like you could take, maybe 5 grams. I think it's like, I kind of go by the recommended dosages. So I'd have to double check, but roughly speaking, I think 3 to 6 grams of citrulline. Now it depends whether you're taking L-citrulline or citrulline malate, because the malate is a certain percentage of it. So you might need to take 8 grams, for instance, of citrulline malate, and maybe only 5 grams of L-citrulline, roughly, to get those really good effects.
And this powder here is 10 grams, which is just the serving size,
Yeah, so the serving size is going to be different where you're actually taking the powder, but then how much of the actual nitrate is in it might be, I think it's in around 300 to 500 milligrams, but I could be wrong on that. But maybe we'll throw that in the notes to give the proper
Well, we can just stick to
dosages.
whatever the recommended usage
and in
is.
that study as well, it'll kind of say exactly, because I think it was like 2 grams of the beetroot and 6 grams, 3 grams of L-citrulline and 2 grams of the beetroot powders, roughly speaking. But again, if we need to correct
we can
that,
give
we'll
specifics
maybe
on
throw it
notes
up on the screen and put it in the show notes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I also feel like it would be really helpful for guys and girls who are doing like low carb or keto. I feel like it would help to keep some pump in the muscles. Is that correct?
Well, the pump should still be pretty good. Like when you're going low carb keto, what I find is that taking more creatine and sodium, that element or something like that. Yeah, because carbohydrates will cause you to store a lot more water.
Right.
Which too much is obviously undesirable. People feel, the water retention. So low carb can be beneficial from that perspective. But then if you go too much, then you'll feel a little deflated. But it's not necessarily the pump, because when you work out, even if you're on keto, you should still get a good pump in terms of the circulation. But I do think the sodium, you need to be more cognizant of that, and the creatine while you're going low carb or keto.
Cool. Sorry, little side tangent there.
No, it's good.
Yeah. What's next on the list? We'll just rock and roll through them.
Yeah, we can kind of jump around a little bit. Something I wanted to talk about, because it's super popular right now, are collagen supplements. So now what my favorite is actually just taking bone broth. That is where I prefer the actual, the food version rather than the supplement, because I think there's other little benefits that we may not even be aware of, because you get a lot of these minerals and stuff that are going to be in bone broth and other factors. And I've always found when I take bone broth in particular, I notice my joints becoming like bulletproof.
Yeah.
Now, collagen is great for lots of things, skin, hair, nails, all that thing. Anyone into cosmetics and skin will go on and on about collagen. Now, when it comes to joints, because there's a lot of different types of collagen. So a lot of people are taking collagen thinking, oh, this is going to be great for my joints. But in the research, the normal collagen supplements don't seem to work very well, and it's only one specific type of collagen. So if you want to take it for joints or joint health, and it is very effective because it's even more effective than things like glucosamine and chondroitin, which are great for joints, you need to take a specific, which is type 2 collagen. So that is something that I do recommend to people if they want to take it for joints, because again, quite frankly, on a practical level, a lot of people aren't going to make or take bone. No, okay, you can just buy bone broth.
It'd be the same as like bone marrow too, right? Eating it like that.
Well, bone marrow is a little different. That's very high in fat, which can be good for other things. There's certain nutrients in there, and it's kind of almost, they're similar to like stem cells. So there could be some benefits in that. But bone broth is more where you're soaking the actual bones, and in joints is what you want. So it's not even just because you can get bones and you can get the marrow, but what you want is joints.
Interesting.
So I would always get these different, I would go to the farmer's market and get all these bones that are joints. And then because when you put it in the fridge, it's very gelatinous. So it'll, like, even the jar, if I put it upside down, it won't come out, because there's a huge amounts of gelatin, which is the
And
collagen.
are you sticking to like bovine, or are you doing chicken? What's your preferred source? Does it really matter?
It doesn't really matter. Now with the chicken, I'll always make sure it's pasteurized, because when you're getting into the joints and all that, you really want to make sure the source is very good. So I always try to get pasture-raised, organic, etc. when it comes to that. But yeah, generally I would have gone just for beef bones or bison, but chicken is good. And you'll find cultures throughout the world, again, bone broth was a staple, because even when you make soups and stews, we used to always put in the joints and the bones and everything as part of that. So we would naturally get that. Now again, in the modern diet, we generally don't do that as much. So we're lacking a lot of those nutrients, and then the protein is we're lacking some of that, and it can kind of create an imbalance of the amino acids, etc. So that's where definitely taking bone broth or making soups and stews is better. So I much prefer that. But like I said, if you are going to go the supplement route, then if it's for joints, make sure it's the type 2.
Type 2.
And that's super important.
Let me ask you this, because I've heard this question a lot, and there's certain influencers who are selling it for this purpose. Is taking like collagen powder a good source for like building muscle as a protein source?
So when we're going back to all those amino acids, glycine is going to be super high in those amino acids that make up sort of the collagen. And that is important, but I see it more like to round it out or complete it rather than just, again, taking it on its own is not going to do a whole lot from a muscle building perspective. So again, we want all the amino acids, but then definitely adding in those extra amino acids from the collagen or bone broth or whatever, that will enhance the overall kind of anabolic effect of those of amino acids.
Good. I think that's a good thing to clear up, because I know I've seen a lot of people that is their main protein source to supplement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe stick to the eggs, the beef, the dairy stuff, and then add this on top for its other benefits.
Yeah. It's great as an addition, but on its own, we're back to that incomplete protein thing.
Yes.
So that's where, I don't think it's going to be as good.
Awesome. So that's collagen. What else do you want to touch on?
So we talked about the nitric oxide, and we talked about the collagen. Next one, really interesting supplement, and there's more and more research coming out on this, is the berberine.
Hear about this a lot.
Yeah, berberine is a fantastic nutrient. So again, naturally found in plants, so it's just a compound from that, but it has a tremendous effect on overall metabolic health, and in particular, your blood sugar, blood glucose.
Like how efficient you manage your blood glucose.
Yeah. So what's interesting is there's a really good, and I actually think it for a lot of people, there's the side effects are very minimal, and in fact they're even looking at this as a drug for longevity, is metformin. So metformin can have a very good effect. It's the sort of first line of drugs that they would recommend if someone is diabetic. So really good effect on blood sugar. And berberine has very similar effects. So it's like a sort of a natural version. Now, again, check with your doctor. I'm not going to, but like again, it's just as a natural nutrient, it seems to have a very good effect on blood sugar. So it'll reduce your fasting blood sugar considerably, your A1C.
Wow.
And it has all these other fascinating effects, because there's so much that we don't know about these things and how they work. But a lot of these things even affect your microbiome in a very positive way.
Yeah.
And have these effects. So for instance, with berberine, there's even things where it can help with things like SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, and other things to do with gut health. It seems to help the endothelial cells, like just in the wall and the lining. So yeah, very good for kind of gut health. But berberine, and there's even some studies showing that it can help with weight loss as well. So weight loss for blood sugar, overall metabolic health, is going to have positive effects on cholesterol as well.
Does it have effects on testosterone as well?
Don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that particular.
I might be getting it confused with something else, but I thought I was hearing a lot of people talking about it for that specific purpose as well.
Okay.
Maybe I'm completely wrong on that, but maybe that's something we could look into more.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So berberine, that's something that I recommend to quite a lot of people actually, and we would see noticeable results with that.
That's awesome. When should we be taking this? With a meal? Is that going to help us with the blood glucose? If it's when we're eating food, is it just?
Yeah. So before each meal, I think roughly 500 milligrams, if I remember correctly. So 2 to 3 times a day in a lot of the studies is what they're using it, and seeing noticeable. But that's something where people do notice, because a lot of people are now using these continuous blood glucose monitors, which I think we should do a whole episode on blood glucose and all the tips and tricks that we have for that, because we have a lot. Because, remember, 50% of Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. So, and that doesn't even mean the other 50% are optimum levels.
Right.
Because even the scales they use is not for absolute optimum health. It just, they have to draw the line somewhere, but it's an arbitrary line.
Yeah.
So most people are going to want to improve their blood sugar and insulin resistance and all that sort of thing. So that is where I do think, berberine could be a great way to improve that.
Well, while we're on the subject of blood sugar, I know you don't have it here or anything, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about it in maybe the Metabolic Health podcast, but it could be another interesting supplement to add. Will you talk about fiber a little bit, and have the effects of having fiber with a meal and how that can affect your blood glucose?
So,
because obviously it's in your food, but then you can supplement on top, with psyllium husk or whatever.
Yeah, so fiber can be used for so many things.
I know,
I guess it's sort of you could definitely take it as a supplement. Yeah. But I guess it's one of those ones where I was thinking of covering it when we do like a whole episode on overall gut health and microbiome, because I break that down into probiotics and prebiotics, which most fibers are prebiotics.
That makes sense.
But fiber has multiple uses. So for instance, with blood sugar, because it's slowing down the absorption of your food, then you're not going to get as much of a spike in your blood sugar. So just in a very simple way, that's one mechanism. Another mechanism can be because it's going to positively affect the microbiome, and your microbiome has an impact on your blood sugar as well. So it probably has 2 mechanisms where it can affect your blood sugar.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can save that for more in-depth on another podcast, but I was just thinking
there's so many overlaps, because that's...
I was like, we're here on blood glucose, might as well. It's another little tidbit.
Totally. You could throw it in multiple places, because it's going to be beneficial anyway for people to learn and find out about that. So, absolutely.
Is that all you got for us on berberine?
Yeah, so incredible for reducing triglycerides. So for instance, the A1C and blood sugar will drop considerably. So, and you're talking like decent numbers, like 12% and 20%, like big drops. And it's something, again, when you're wearing the continuous blood glucose monitor and you start taking it, you will see the difference. So really, really great for that.
So you'd recommend that to just about anybody, is that right?
Yeah, well, not anybody. I mean, if you've got really good blood sugar control, I don't think there's any point in taking it. And again, a lot of these studies will show that if it's all within range, is obviously not going to have much of an impact, which in a way is a good thing, because you don't want things to work when you don't need it to work.
Sure.
Because it can throw you, maybe too much in one direction. Like if you have high blood pressure and you take something to normalize it, that's good. But if you have normal blood pressure, you don't want it to drop down too low.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice in a way that it doesn't work as well if everything is good. So it's only if things are a little bit out of whack, then it can bring it back into balance, which is fantastic.
Awesome. What's this?
An ADOE. So this is something that's really interesting. Vitamin E. So that's a really interesting area, because funnily enough, there was a lot of research and studies came out showing that vitamin E can do more harm than good. But it was a particular type of vitamin E.
Okay.
So this one is now, there's a lot of great research on this particular vitamin E, which is from a natto, a particular type of plant. And this type of vitamin E is showing tremendous effects, again, all across the board for metabolic health. So this form, the tocotrienols, is what these are called, the delta. So the other ones are, I'm terrible at remembering how to, because when you're reading stuff, you don't necessarily know how to pronounce it all the time.
We'll show you some grace.
Yeah, but the original kind of vitamin E are the other ones that are, and again, this is the problem we talked about multivitamins, why I don't necessarily like them, because they can put the wrong forms of things in there. So the one that has been shown to almost cause more harm than good is the alpha other type.
Okay.
So, but these ones
We'll
have
just
been
focus
shown
on this one because you can pronounce this one.
Yeah. So the anyway, tocotrienols, these have been shown to be very effective. So, for instance, it'll reduce your LDL cholesterol a huge amount. So, for instance, it could be like 170 something, and it brings it all the way down to almost 100.
Wow.
So incredible drops in
bad
LDL
cholesterol, quote
and then
unquote.
Big drop in triglycerides as well, like could be 30%, and that's just in a couple of the studies. So yeah, and again, it has all these other really good health benefits as well. So incredibly good as an antioxidant. So this is something that you're going to see more and more of as well. So very interesting supplement to keep an eye on. And I'll probably refer to Chris Krezer because he talks a lot about this. So I listened to a couple of his podcasts on it.
Shout out to
So if
Chris.
you want to go, yeah, he's phenomenal.
He's awesome.
So highly recommend looking into that as well for all-around metabolic health. Really interesting stuff coming out of that. And we might do a deeper dive at some point into a lot of these, but just wanted to kind of give a quick overview of the things that I think are worth looking into, and we'll try to give a lot of links because again, once you go into any like nitric oxide, you could do 10 hours.
You can get down the wormhole.
Yeah, so I just want to give a little overview and the things that I definitely think are going to be ones that are going to benefit people's health and to look into further. So
Awesome.
So where are we? So we got the collagen, berberine, the phosphatidylserine. So
This is your last one.
yeah, this is one of my little ones that I think I love this supplement, and it does a few things. So phosphatidylserine, first of all, it's a natural nutrient that you find a lot of in your brain anyway, and it's very good for all cognitive functions. So in a lot of studies, and they've done quite a lot of studies with this, it improves pretty much all cognitive functions. So your focus, your concentration, memory. So even for people with dementia, a lot of the studies are showing positive effects. But the other effect of phosphatidylserine is that it reduces cortisol, your stress hormone, by over 30%, like a considerable amount. So why would you take it, or what are the use cases? So I take it if I want to improve my focus and concentration and memory and also reduce stress at the same time. So for instance, if you're studying and you're going for an exam or something like that, brilliant for that. Also in the evening time, especially if you find you're under stress or whatever, and you find that you're not sleeping that well, reducing cortisol is going to help you sleep much better at nighttime.
That's amazing. Well, let me ask you this. So I feel like cortisol is like, the big scary hormone that everyone talks about, and it's only bad. But obviously, like, cortisol is very important. It has a lot of very important functions in the body. So how much should we be trying to negate it? And, at what point are we taking away too much? Do you have any idea there of?
Yeah, so cortisol, the way it works is you should have a good rise in the morning time. So it kind of comes up in the morning, it'll kind of peak mid-morning, then it kind of drops, but then you get another little boost in the afternoon, and then it should drop down a lot in the evening. So it's all about making sure that that's correct, and there's cortisone, and you want that whole kind of system to be very well balanced. That's all in the realm of, and again, another podcast all about stress and circadian rhythm, because it's all to do with what's called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary axis. So that's really important as well. So cortisol, you don't want to, it's like if you excess
get
cortisol,
rid of all of it.
No. Like cortisol gives you energy. So if you don't have cortisol,
it wakes you up in the morning.
You'll just be asleep all day. You just have no energy. So it's kind of like insulin. It's a two-edged sword. There's a lot of positive, but the problem is on average most people have too
excess.
much, like with insulin, and the same with cortisol. So if you're under a lot of stress, from different things. It can be stress in your life, but it can also just be stress like bad circadian rhythm and all these other factors. Again,
it's kind of one of those things where if you have too much, you'll probably know. You'll feel it.
Yeah. So if you're trouble like winding down in the evening and getting to sleep, for instance, you could have elevated cortisol in the evening time.
Yeah.
And that can prevent you from sleeping properly. So that can be very, very beneficial. So I love that. It's also great to take before you work out, because I find when you take it before you work out, because again, when you exercise, you do produce cortisol.
Yep.
And again, if it's excess cortisol, does cause muscle wastage. So if you want to hold on to that muscle tissue, and making sure you don't spike too much cortisol.
I imagine, especially for a longer duration workout, that could be really beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really good, along with the focus and concentration. So that's something that I do take. I don't take it particularly in any particular way. I just sort of take it as I need it, you know. So I might just take, 2 or 3 capsules before I work out, or in the evening time if I, for a long stressful day or something, and I want to wind down and really relax and get to sleep early, I might take it. So that's
awesome.
The reasons I might take that one.
Fantastic.
And now, one that I don't have on the table here, but another one that I definitely want to talk about because it's within this sort of realm, is coenzyme Q10.
Okay.
So that's an incredibly good, very strong antioxidant. And this is another one that's going to have, benefits both with, like, for instance, blood pressure. Again, noticeable drops in systolic and diastolic blood pressure. Like, we're talking about 10 to 15 points just by taking the coenzyme Q10.
Yeah.
And I think that would be around 200 milligrams a day that you take of that. And again, all around for metabolic health. I think it will reduce, for instance, your LDL cholesterol by, could be 10 to 12%. So again, considerable. So that's another really good one. So I'll kind of put those together for different things. So if somebody has elevated blood pressure, maybe their blood sugar isn't perfect, maybe their cholesterol profile, and they're just looking to optimize or improve their health for cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood sugar, then I might even stack them, where you go berberine, coenzyme Q10, and the annatto form of vitamin E. Then you stack those 3 together, and wow, your metabolic health will be amazing.
Wow.
Then again, the nitric oxide, you could even throw that in there as well. And you're really covering all these different areas, like, very effectively.
Wow.
So, yeah, pretty fascinating, amazing nutrients that really are having phenomenal results in metabolic health.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I want to start adding some of these in. I've never tried berberine.
Yeah.
I'm interested to give that a shot.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, when I, and I take it, I have the continuous blood glucose monitor on and off every few months. I'm always
Cyborg
experimenting. And the berberine is definitely something that I've noticed, like a substantial difference when you take that, which is really, really awesome. So, but funny enough, I'm actually now more interested in taking it again for gut health.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. I had the effects on the microbiome, and in particular SIBO and stuff like that. So that's something that I might kind of delve into myself a little bit more. But type 2 collagen, when I'm really training hard and I'm doing the heavy eccentric training and I really want to have bulletproof joints, then I'll jump onto that.
That's great.
I have to say, I still prefer taking the bone broth.
Yeah.
So I used to make it all the time, and I just haven't been as good lately because, a lot of hours and having a kid and everything. It's just practical-wise.
It's a lot, yeah.
I used to have that pressure cooker going all the time with the bone broth, and it's brilliant because it's...
Back in the bachelor days.
Yeah.
You're just eating like ground meat and bone broth all the time.
Very simple, kind of, very simple.
That's so funny, though. I think we've talked about this before. It's like bachelor bodybuilding versus when you get married, and then it's like suddenly we start making food that tastes good.
Yeah, yeah, it is funny. I never really cared about the taste of food, but now I have to.
Yeah.
And look, it's fine. I mean, I got into it, and I can do a much better job now.
It's fine.
It's fine, yeah.
Whatever.
I still, I know I said this last week as well.
Some people need to enjoy things, I guess.
Yeah,
the weak-minded.
I just find the food thing is like, to me, I mean, I love nutrition. I'm fascinated with it. And I find all this magical. I actually think nutrients and food is magic. So I'm so enamored by all these incredible effects. And here we are, but we can change like your energy, your mood, how your body works, how you look, how you feel. And to me, like the fact that all that's pliable, and your brain and even your cognitive functions, to me, that's all like magical. Like it's magic. So I'm so fascinated with that. Like giving all that up to change the whole quality of my life while I'm on this planet for a short period of time. It's like, oh my gosh, just because something, you know, affects your taste buds for a few seconds, it's just, I can't relate to that. I really can't.
Oh my God.
I can't.
Guys,
I mean, I get that people like things that taste good, but to sacrifice your whole quality of life just because they want...
We went into this yesterday here at work in the kitchen. What were you eating? Was it tuna? I think you were eating canned tuna. Yeah. And he was like, guys, I really don't understand why this is such a big deal. He's like, I mean, how much of time is it actually affecting me? And Thurston goes and he starts eating a bite and going, 1 Mississippi, 2. And he was like, okay, so 30 seconds a bite, that's all it's affecting me? Who cares? To give up my whole life for 30 seconds of pleasure? Yeah. It's true, though.
Well, I think it's a little bit of a problem with humanity because everything is instant gratification.
I was literally about to say that, yeah.
And, you know, whereas I want to feel good, like of a 24-hour day, you know, I want to feel good like 90% and just for the sake of a few seconds of, and it's not like, you know, I'm eating things that taste terrible. It's just like, just because it's not like all these, you know, optimized the taste. For me, it's like, it's lovely to go out for a meal or something and it's a great tasting thing. But to me, that's like a special experience. I don't need that every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
There's no denying a well-prepared steak is better than a crappy one at home.
Of course, yeah. But I mean, for sure. But again, I just think if people truly understood the effects of these things, they're not going to sacrifice their health just for a few seconds. Because a lot of, I mean, I read an interesting book all about this, but what we think we like and what we actually like are different because it's your anticipation, because there's different parts of the brains that light up. So if it's dopamine where you're looking forward to something because you think you like it, is very different from the actual pleasure of liking something in the moment. So actually, Dr. Robert Lustig wrote a really interesting book all about that. I think it's called The Hacking of the American Mind. And it's the difference between kind of like dopamine and serotonin. So it's about wanting and liking are two very different things. So there's a whole complex aspect to all of that because a lot of it is associational as well. So comfort foods or things we grow up. And of course, all the advertising, it's all associational. It
works, yeah.
Because if you think of these big companies, they spend billions on associating certain emotions with their food. So it could be like happiness, the happy meal or whatever, and then they associate it with that food. And now like that particular fast food company, instead of happy, they're going for love because it's a stronger emotion. I'm loving it. Yeah. So it's all these associations.
But it's so weird, but it's why people won't give it up. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I could, you know, they'd rather be unhealthy and live a little bit less because they're like, well, I'd rather live less and be happy while I'm here. And I'm like, oh gosh, it's all backwards. But it's brainwashing and it's working. And it's sad to see, honestly, you know. But we're going to do a whole podcast on psychology and all the fun hormones and how it's all working and how we can harness this energy to being more effective and healthy.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to ask you one thing. I know it's not on the table. We were talking about stress management a little bit.
Yeah.
We used to sell some, but CBD oil. Are you still into that? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. CBD is phenomenal and has very good clinical evidence to show that it has it's kind of interesting because hemp used to be ubiquitous and everywhere. Yeah. And in fact, at one point, you know, because even materials were made from hemp, etc. But just naturally, it would be everywhere. So even the cannabis plant would have been everywhere. And then even the animals would eat that. So even if you had an egg, there would be a certain amount of even THC, but definitely CBD in there.
Wow.
So all these things, and we have all these cannabinoid receptors in the body. So again, there's quite a few different pathways of how it works. Obviously, it has a pain reduction aspect to it, and it reduces anxiety. So there's a few different pathways, and it just overall reduces oxidative stress as well in the body. So it has a lot of health benefits. And I find the CBD, it's funny because just working with people over the years, a lot of people will notice, and I certainly notice it almost immediately. Like it's a really noticeable
We used to do
effect.
those syringe droplets and put one in, and it was like immediately just peace.
Yeah, that was the high energetics form.
I was going to ask you the brand. High. Okay.
We're not even getting a kickback or anything, but
not yet. But like and subscribe, please, please.
But they have a really good formula because it's water soluble, so you get that instant. It's absorbed and you feel it. Yeah, like I mean, and most people, not everybody, some people just don't seem to have. Just in my experience, I don't know what the research is, because again, the problem with a lot of research, everything is averaged out, but then you have outliers. So for some people, they could get a huge benefit, and some people maybe none at all. So there's a few people that don't seem to get an effect, whereas for me and most people, they get an amazing effect. And they just feel way more calm, relaxed. The stress is just literally evaporates out of your body. So for sure, I think, that's a good one. So if you have any more questions like that, but CBD, I think can be good. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, obviously comment below. I'm curious if anyone's taken any of these, and
let us know
what your effects are, what your experiences are, because that's the one thing that I noticed working with people over the years. You can read up all these things, you can look at the research, but there's nothing like the test when I'm actually working with people over the years, seeing the actual impact and their blood sugar or their blood test results on all these things and what actually works and what doesn't. So these are ones that I really think are, have substantial, because some of these things are so marginal, and then in real life, you just don't see the effects. So there's a lot of things that I've tried over the years that do not work.
And so these are ones that you've been having your clients do for a long time.
Yeah, they really have noticeable differences and results with people. So we went through all the essential ones. These are kind of the real special, very interesting ones. And there's ones that I'm currently researching and trying that I don't know yet, but in the future
I could see us doing another podcast on that.
Yeah, because there's things like, for instance, mushrooms and mushroom extracts. Don't know a whole lot about that, but there seems to be
nootropics and everything.
A lot in those things. Yeah. So for the brain, but my go-to for the brain at the moment is the Phosphatidylserine, but I'm sure there's a lot of other really good things from that perspective as well. So we'll keep going, and we'll update as we go along. We'll throw things out there, but that's I think a pretty good starting point. And look, if you take some or stack some of those, I think you're going to see tremendous effects in metabolic health.
I was going to say, guys, if you're listening, give these a shot. We're just giving out recommendations. Consult your doctor before you do anything, please. But let us know how it's working for you. Let us know if you've already tried them, and we'd be interested to see your experience.
Yep, absolutely.
I think that's all we have for today.
Yep, pretty straightforward.
Thanks for watching. For real, like and subscribe. That would mean a lot to us. And we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
See you soon.